All right, my name is Rich Schmidt. We're here today with Pat and Jackie Dukes. It is June 26, 2026. We're at Dukes Family Vineyards in Amity. Pat, Jackie, thank you both so much for joining us today. First question, either one of you can take this and run with it, is why wine?
You know, wine is something that enhances life. And we do, or did in our prior lives anyways, a lot with food and friends and entertaining. And it was one that, you know, over 20 years of tasting and collecting and sharing, we met an incredible group of friends. And the one thing that's consistent among wine people that we've seen, whether it's from the collecting, the sharing, the making side, is wine. People that are interested in wine are very generous. And with that, a lot of the people that we were fortunate enough to run into when we were younger in life had significant cellars. And, you know, it was a journey that started for us in California with Cabernets and Chardonnays and, you know, the stuff that was more readily accessible and things that we could travel to and visit and enjoy. And over time, that led us to wine groups like the International Wine and Food Society and the Chevalier de Testevin and others that we met members and became involved in those groups. But a lot of these people had very diverse cellars. Some of them were big Bordeaux collectors. And then, you know, it kind of evolved from that into Burgundy collectors. And that was kind of the dark side for us, is, you know, Burgundy is just such a journey, and there's so much information and things that you have to understand. And, you know, the property that's 30 feet from the next one, the soils are totally different and the wines are different. And, you know, over hundreds and hundreds of years, they've evolved, but it truly is a place where place matters, terroir matters. And you'll see just the way that it's there. And when we first started, those were wines that were readily accessible in the market at a price that was halfway reasonable. So you could take and you could do dinners and you could do things and you could share those wines. And, you know, you could buy Grand Crus for $100, you know, or even $50. Not quite so much the same today, but, you know, like I said, it was one that the generosity of friends let us taste and explore and do things. We always enjoyed cooking and doing those kind of things. So it was one that, you know, over the years, we've had the opportunity to maintain a cellar, be able to share it with friends, be able to spend time in the kitchen, basically create a menu of 6 or 7 courses and match it with wines and pair with wines. And, you know, we could go 100 different directions because it's just so many different twists that you can take. And for us, we typically enjoy a little bit of everything. So, you know, we've got a lot of Alsatians and Germans and Italians and Australians, and, you know, it just kind of, so whatever kind of food that you create, you know, you can take and elevate with wine. And it really is that food-wine connection that kind of brought us into wine. Back before we started even thinking about this, we sold a company back in '97. And at that time, you know, we were working, or I was working almost 100 hours a week. And it was a little much. So we went with the public company that we sold it to for a year and then kind of retired for a little bit. And during that time frame, I kind of just melted down.
He was 37.
37, had gray hair. I mean, it was totally gray. And, retired. And, the thing that they don't tell you is when you retire, none of your friends can play. So, you're kind of stuck by yourself. So
at 37.
At 37. So you're kind of going, well, this really sucks. But, so we started out going to the gym. So we do that for about 4 hours a day.
When you say we, it means he.
You did too. But
Okay, yeah.
the kids were young. They were like 7 and 10. So it was perfect. You coached their teams and you went and did the activities with them. And, it was kind of one of those things. They weren't used to seeing you, so that took a while to get used to. But, over that time frame, it wasn't bad. You go to the gym in the morning, and then usually I'd go to a wine shop in the afternoon. And we'd buy 5 or 6 bottles, and I'd sit and drink with the staff. So we'd taste everything. And I think over the first 18 months, I tasted over 3,000 wines. And, that was kind of good. I came home late one night, and Jackie looked at me, and she goes, you really need to get a job. And I said, no, I don't. So I kind of just said no, and not quite ready. And I went to culinary school. So I went to Cordon Bleu for 15 months and spent 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, learning to cook. And that was kind of the greatest vacation ever, other than the fact that they actually expected you to be there every day for 8 hours and then study and do that kind of stuff. But that's kind of when we really started ramping up doing the dinners. So we were doing 7-course dinners twice a month, 12 friends, and pairing with wine. And it was a good time. And then my old partners, bought back our company from the public company and called and said, we need you for 30 days. I said, okay, cool. So I went back to help them for 30 days, and 30 years later, I was still there. So it's been kind of one of those things that during that time frame, as we started back the other side, we kind of thought we wanted to do something else. So we were kind of, starting to hit 40, going 45, and looking at it and thinking, we're kind of starting to hit midlife, and, do we want a Ferrari? And, she wants a blonde, gym boy. And you're kind of looking going, okay, well, we can do that, or we can do something together. So we kind of came up here actually looking to do a restaurant. And her brother had attended IPNC and basically said, it's a beautiful area, way underserved from a restaurant perspective back then. And so we came up to take a look, and I think that was like 2002. And, looked around, and I have several friends that are own restaurants. And with that, 11 of the 12 said, unless your family and your wife are willing to do the restaurant with you and be there, don't do it.
I said breakfast?
Jackie said breakfast, and I go, well, that's not really a restaurant, that's a cafe, but, you want to lose, I guess we could have lost less money, but, I'm not a morning person, so breakfast was out. And with that, we kind of fell in love with the area. I mean, it's beautiful. And we just decided, okay, we can get out of Arizona where it's 120 degrees. We want to go somewhere cool. We want to do something wine related. So we looked in California and Oregon and Washington and up in Canada, and just kind of thought we kept coming back here. And this property that we've got now, basically it was the first property we ever looked at, but it was much bigger back then.
120 acres.
And, it was just, we just couldn't afford it. And we came back in 2004, and they had subdivided it and basically had carved off the piece that they couldn't sell, which was the vineyard land, which was the only part we wanted. And we thought, okay, this is kind of cool. So basically when we came up here, there was nothing here. You know, there was a small vineyard that was, you know, kind of run down a little bit and had some plantings that were done in areas that were all clay. And so it was just not quite where you needed to be. But, you know, it was one that we thought, okay, we can make this work.
And it came with the right to build.
And it came with the right to build a house, which was important to us, given that we were going to abandon everything and go off into the great unknown. Good Lord.
Sold everything.
Everything. So when you look at it and you go, okay, well, this was not the smartest thing we've ever done.
Except for his wine cellar. He didn't sell his wine cellar.
Yeah, just kind of all in, put your chips in, and see where it goes. Worst case, we'll be back working at McDonald's, and yeah, we'll still eat.
That's the restaurant industry.
It is. It's a restaurant industry. I'm sure they take a quart on Blue Train Chef. Come on.
He loves McDonald's Big Mac.
What can you do? So that's kind of how we got here. It's been a journey. I think we started in wine. I grew up in a family that did not drink at all.
Where did you grow up?
Tucson,
Arizona.
Arizona. And we had 6 kids, and my mom and dad were crazy busy, always doing something. You know, it was high emphasis on activity, doing something. And when we were young, you'd kind of all get up around 8. Mom would make you breakfast, and she'd basically push you out the door, shut the door, and lock it.
See you at dinner.
At noon, you'd come back and there'd be sandwiches on the porch. And then, nope, you can't come in. And then basically, you know, you'd come back at 5 and get cleaned up for dinner, and Dad would come home every night. We'd have dinner at 6, and it would be every night. So my dad worked probably, I think, 70, 80 hours a week. I mean, he worked all the time. And probably the greatest work ethic I think I've ever met in anyone. But he was providing for 6 kids, and, you know, he didn't have a lot of choice. So, but with that, you know, he was still the kind of guy that made time to coach teams and take you hunting and fishing and doing that kind of stuff. So it was kind of a special childhood growing up. You know, it's just, you weren't rich, but, you know, you had a lot of family and time and presence and love and, you know, just kind of all the things that you would normally, you know, tie to kind of a happy childhood. But we started, I think we didn't start drinking wine until probably close to 30.
Yeah.
We happened to be with the company that I was with. I was in Denver for, I think, almost 3 months, working on projects and doing stuff, and we finished a big one. And the person that we were working with took us up to Aspen Vail, for a weekend of skiing. And with that, we went to dinner, and they ordered a couple beautiful bottles, and we were drinking them. We go, okay, this isn't so bad. And Jackie, you know, was more into harder liquors at that point, and said, you know, this red wine stuff's not so bad.
If all red wine tasted this good, I'd drink red wine.
So it was kind of like, okay, well, duly noted.
Yeah, so you started collecting.
And with that, it was just kind of a slow journey. You know, we started with, you know, buying stuff at the wineries and then at the wine shops, and we kind of found that, you know, our closets got full from the ground up. It was a nice dark place.
This is in
Phoenix. And then we started buying wine fridges, and they got filled up. And then we ended up with, I think, by the time we built our first real cellar, we had like 6 standalone wine fridges and we'd already had one major disaster where we were in Phoenix and tripped the breaker and lost two wine fridges and we opened the cellars and the wine was just flowing out. And you're kind of going, okay, well, there's
a lot of money.
600 bottles we will never get back. And, you know, you just kind of shake your head and you go, okay, well, this isn't very smart. Maybe we should build a cellar. And we did.
You built a cellar and then you had wine off-site too in other people's cellars.
Well, we weren't very good about self-control. Well, I'm not very good about self-control, so it's just kind of weird.
I couldn't drink it fast enough.
And we tried, and we had a lot of parties, and we did a lot of things, but it just kind of grew and grew.
No, what he said to me was, I said, you're buying too much wine. And he said, it's not for us to drink, it's an investment.
Yeah, and I think we've only sold wine once, ever.
After 2008, we were like, oops, we need some money. So he sold a lot of really good bottles to get us through.
But, you know, it was more, for us, I mean, the way we view wine is once it hits the cellar, it's worth zero. So you drink it. It doesn't matter what the label is. And a lot of times we'll just tell our friends, go into the cellar and pick what you want. And, you know, you kind of go, please, 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 please don't. But you never know. And most of the friends are really respectful. I mean, you know, they know wine, they know what it is, and they'll pick a good bottle, but not, you know, they won't go and hit La Tâche every time, which is nice. But I don't know. It's been good for us. And Jackie's kind of an Air Force brat, so I'll let you talk about that.
Oh, yeah. I'm the youngest of four.
Where were you born?
Fort Carson, Colorado. We moved to Germany after that, and then we moved to New Mexico. Alamogordo. And then we moved to Tucson. So I didn't have to move as much as most of the Air Force children, like my sister.
Yeah, you were lucky. You got to stay in Tucson from the time you were like 6. So that was kind of cool.
So my dad was a fighter pilot, and in his travels, he learned to appreciate wine, and he shared it with us at the dinner table. And then he shared it with Pat, and so Pat knew that food and wine had a place.
It could live together.
It could live together. Yeah, that's my story.
Well, we both went to the same high school.
We went to the same high school, but started dating in college.
She was too cool.
He
She had a boyfriend. She was really cool.
He was baseball, football, student body president in our senior year. We actually graduated the same year. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the first time we actually met was at your house when I crashed your graduation party with a friend of mine who was a friend of hers. As I was sitting in her hot tub drinking champagne. I think I was 22 at the time.
Back then, the parents could throw those kind of parties.
I was a slow kid, you know.
Yeah.
Left behind once or twice. And that's kind of, I think, the first time we met. But she was a friend of a friend. And, you know, this kind of evolved.
Where did you go to college?
Arizona State.
And Pat, what did you study?
I studied accounting. I started my freshman year as pre-med, and I was playing baseball. And there was just no way I could keep up with, you know, a real education and play sports. Because back then it was crazy. I mean, at ASU, during the spring, you played 81 games. So you played 6 days a week and traveled. So it was just kind of one of those things that there was no way that you could actually do something serious. So I thought, okay, well, I can count and I'm good with numbers.
Very good with numbers.
So I can be an accountant. How hard can that be? You know, most things in my life I underestimate. But,
even our winemaker, she always refers to Pat when we're getting all the blends together because he knows how much each barrel is holding and what we can do. And she'll be like, Pat, what does your head say?
But, so that was kind of that background. And then I graduated, finished my master's in taxation, and then went to work for a big accounting firm doing taxes for 7 years. And the group that I ended up with, that I spent the next 35 years with, was a client. So they hired me when there were, I think, 8 people in the office. And by the time I left, there were 2,400. So it was just kind of expansive growth. But
In what field?
we built apartment complexes around the U.S.
Commercial real estate.
So commercial real estate, yeah. That was okay.
It paid the bills.
Yeah, for the first 10 years, I was CFO. And then for the last 25, basically, I was contract negotiator. So basically, people would do everything, and I would document all the deals. So it was kind of
Closer.
the least fun part of the entire process is what I got to do for 25 years. But we drank, it was okay.
It's a good thing you found food and wine.
Exactly,
Yeah.
you know, you kind of find other things. But
And Jackie, what was your education in?
Real estate from Arizona State. And then I worked as a loan closer, and then I had children and took some time off from work and raised the kids. And then once they got into high school, I was like, I should go back to work. So I tried to sell real estate. And then the kids would call from the nurse's office while they're in high school. I'm sick, come get me. And I realized they still needed me, so I worked as a real estate agent for a year.
And then we came up here, and
came up here.
now she has a real job. She has to run all this, and I'm in the background just doing what I'm told.
No, he does all the legal stuff, major number stuff, and I was in charge of contacts and setting up tastings and
The
So
people
you
part.
talked a little bit earlier about the property when you first saw it. Tell me about, I guess, your initial vision. You see the property, you see there's a kind of vineyard,
Piece of land.
not much else.
Yeah.
What did you envision?
Well, not this. Honestly, we thought, basically we'd, build out a little house and make our wine somewhere else, and have maybe 15 acres of grapes and sell 80% of it, and it just never quite worked out that way. So we started out originally, when we came looking at property, we worked with Gary Andrus, and we set up a meeting with Gary. It was probably
Mike,
2004. And, I called Gary and, introduced myself. And I said, I'd really love to come and pick your brain and talk to you. And he goes, fine, I'll give you 20 minutes. Don't be late. Well, we got lost.
We were late.
So we were 30 minutes late to our 20-minute meeting. And, we just started talking. And we ended up, I think we were there for 6 hours and had 8 bottles of wine.
My brother and sister-in-law were with us.
So it wasn't
They
as
had
bad,
fun.
but we only had 2 bottles apiece. But, at the end of the night, we're just walking out and Gary goes, I think I can work with you. And it's like, okay, what does that mean? He goes, we're going to work together.
I'm going to be your consultant.
So he came and he basically helped us do all the soil sampling and the sampling of the plants and get them off to the universities and tested and laid out vineyards and talked about, things. I mean, his first comment to us originally was, do you have $10 million that you'd just like to burn? If you do, we're good. If not, it's going to be a little bit harder. And at that point, we were in the hundreds of thousands of dollars and not millions. So it was like, okay. So it's going to be a slow process. So we started small. I mean, we basically fixed the vineyards on the bottom, cleaned them up, added the irrigation, amended soils and, did those kind of things. And then
What was planted down there?
down there was a combination, and it was primarily Dijon clones Pinots, 113, 114, 115, and 2 acres of Syrah. And we thought, why in the world would you plant Syrah here? So being the idiots we were, and I think my dad coined it best, and that was, if you're learning something new, you're going to pay a lot of dumb tax. Well, we paid a lot of dumb tax, but, and then up here, we basically ripped out all the vines that were up here and brought in peel and heavy equipment for 2 months to clear the vineyards up above the lake. And every boulder that you see here on all of these rock walls came off the 2 acres above the lake. So we ended up with 3 piles that were 40 foot by 40 foot and 20 foot high. And over the next 10 years, we used those boulders just in landscape projects. So it was a lot easier moving boulders when I was 45 instead of 65. We don't do that anymore. But, and it was just that kind of stuff. I mean, and when we were starting off, you could pick up the phone and call any owner or winemaker, and they would spend as much time with you as you wanted. And you could ask stupid questions, and they'd smack you on the back of the head and say that was a stupid question, but then they'd still answer. So I think, we talked to hundreds of people. I mean, it was just kind of, you'd go through and you'd, do something stupid, like you'd take your big tractor and you'd put it into a spring and it would sink. And you call and go, well, I'm kind of screwed here. Now, how do I get my tractor out of this mud bog? Or,
put it into 4-wheel drive.
We're wanting to trim and, we're running into a problem, or, tractor hit something and it's all tied up, or it's once again back to the dumb tax that we paid a lot of. But it was just such a cooperative group of people that it's just, they wanted you to succeed as much as you wanted to succeed.
Because they wanted Oregon on
Well, they wanted
and
Oregon,
nice,
and it's just kind of one of those things that the rising tide lifts all boats, and they truly believe that. So and it didn't matter. I mean, I think in all of the years, we probably only had one group that was uncooperative. And that was okay. They could be uncooperative. They were rich. We won't talk about that. But no, I mean, and they'd come out and, if you'd have a piece of equipment go down, they'd loan you equipment. And, it was just really different for us, coming out of a corporate environment. If your buddy's place is on fire, well, you go roast marshmallows. I mean, it's not, you don't help put the fire out. And here, it's just kind of good people doing good things, and, really pleasant for us. Kind of a nice change.
So take me through a little bit of the timeline of the evolution of the property.
Sure.
What went in when?
Basically, when we started was 2005. We closed in March.
On my birthday.
On her birthday. We had put it in contract in the fall on my birthday. Talk about a small world. And
had
we
Gary
started,
lined up, so he was.
Yeah, Gary was lined up and done, and we had already done all the testing. So basically, at that point, when we closed, we basically started ripping things out. So we ripped out, I think, 8 acres of vines, and it was a combination of Pinot vines that were planted in an inch of soil and clay underneath, and were 10 years old and kind of pencil width. So you kind of understand that, well, that probably doesn't work. So we ripped all that out. Then we had some Viognier, which we didn't want to do. We had some Roussanne, Pinot Gris, just things that we weren't overly interested in. Is that you? But it was, for us, our thought here was food wines, Pinot, and maybe some Pinot. And over the years that evolved a little bit, and we added a little Chardonnay, but we've still pretty much stuck to kind of classic Oregon wines. I mean, there's a reason why, Oregon's known for those things. So we kind of go down the road and, life works good. But basically we started up here in 2005 and 6, ripping out any vines that were here plus clearing. We trellised in late 2005 and planted this in the spring of 2006. And this was all done under Gary's tutelage to high density. So these are all 1 meter by 1.5 meters, which thanks to Gary meant we had to get a special tractor. Couldn't be a US tractor, for God's sakes. It was an Italian, 42 inches wide, and it looked like a clown car with me driving it like,
So I drove it.
There might be 10 extra people in the trunk, I don't know, but we're kind of going down. And so we got that and got those planted in 6. So 1 meter by 1.5 meters. Gary had selected newer Dijon clones, 667, 777, and 828. And the 828 clone that we picked was one that Gary had brought back from France off of the DRC vineyard. When he was in school there, roommates with DRC's winemaker, and I'm not sure if he actually knew that Gary brought him back in his suitcase or his raincoat or not, but they kind of showed up, and it's you talk to people about having the 828 clone, and it's a mixed reaction. Some people love it, and other people just kind of, I can't believe you would do that. That's ridiculous. But
it's a fun clone.
It's a fun clone. I mean, it's big and it's beautiful and it grows directly straight up and it's just so different. But the fruit is rich and deep and just lovely to work with. So we got all that planted. The end of 2006, we started digging the lake. So the lake, or the property where the lake is now, was kind of where two hills met. So we brought in the heavy belly scrapers and took out the top 18 inches of soil, moved it up to the top of the hill. And during that process, we had a little entertainment that one of the kids that was driving one of the belly scrapers got too close to the edge and rolled it down the hill. And it was a new piece of equipment. And he jumped clear and he was fine.
Dirt mover, yeah.
But I will tell you that every day for the next month that they were there, those old guys just blistered him. Oh man, they treated him like an idiot. It was just abusing him. But, so we got that dug. It was not as easy as you would hope. Putting water in Oregon is fairly complicated. So we had an intermittent stream that used to be there, or not stream, but spring, which ran 4 months a year. And with that, we had to get the state land, we had to get the dam safety, wildlife, forest group, because there were trees around it, the Army Corps of Engineers. So we spent 18 months getting the approvals, and the day the Army Corps came out was entertaining. We're standing on dry land next to the spring, and she looks at me and she goes, "This is a wetlands." I said, I'm from Arizona, so don't take this wrong, but I'm not sure that this is a navigable stream. And apparently it was.
Or she thought, yeah.
So we ended up paying $10,000 to buy 2 acres of replacement land in one of the 8 areas where they were doing wetlands conversion. And then we had to do a bunch of work down on the bottom.
Convert it into a wetland.
So it's like, really? And they had to determine it was only 1/8 of an acre to begin with. So you had to buy 2 to replace an 8th. And their point was, well, you can either do it our way or, we'll spend 2 years in court and you may win, may not, but.
If not, you don't get a dam.
So it's like, okay, well, we'll do it your way. So once we got that done, then we put in the dam, and the dam there is about 48 feet tall. And it holds back 39 acre-feet of water. It's 32 feet deep, and basically just captures rainwater. So we plugged the spring so it doesn't work at all anymore. And we'll end up with losing maybe 3 feet out of the 32 over the summer. And we use rainwater to do all of the landscape irrigation. So it works out perfect. The one thing that we found that was always entertaining is after making the investment in irrigation for all these grapes, they don't need it. So I think we're 14 years since we've watered the bottom of the property, except for the brand new vines. And up here, we average 2 to 3 days a year because the soils are a lot less deep. And this is a very unique property.
Yeah. It's really the 828 that gets the little bit of water in the summer. If we get close to 100.
That's because the soils are only about 4 inches deep there. And then it's got the shattered rock and what have you. But where we're sitting at is kind of the midpoint on the property. So your elevation here is maybe 410 feet. So everything above us is volcanic soil. And all of the plantings below us are all in sedimentary soil. So you've got the Missoula floods brought in all the, the sedimentary marine sediment. And with that, you get 2 completely different wines and grape profiles off of the same property that's not, 200 yards away from each other, which is kind of cool. But, things you find out as you go. I'm not sure which I like better. Each has its day. Huh.
You mentioned Gary as kind of the initial advisor and initial. Tell me about the finding people beyond that to take care of the vines, to make the
Sure.
wine, to kind of share in the project.
Well, we've been, we're not real good with change. So Gary made wines for the first 3 years for us over at Gypsy Dancer. And during that process,
Sterling.
we'd basically farm here, take the grapes to him, go over there and make the wines with him and make all of his wines. We were basically unpaid interns for 3 years where, we had this much grapes and he had this much, but we worked it all. So it was good. But, it's just, you'd learn every day something, and you'd go through and you'd start doing stuff, and he'd explain to you why you were an idiot and help you turn the corner. When we first bought the property, it had just started to be farmed by Sterling Fox, and Sterling at the time was working for Oregon Wine Grapes or something connected with what is now A to Z. So I guess back then, I'm losing my mind. I'm getting old. I can't remember things.
He started out on his own a few years later.
But yeah, when Rex Hill sold, Sterling came and he said, I'm thinking about starting my own company. I said, I think that's a really good idea. We'll be your first client. So we've been with Sterling farming our grapes since day one. And he continues to manage and do it all for us right now. So we're incredibly fortunate. He's got a lot of experience and knows a lot of things, and just has been really good to work with. He does a beautiful job. When you look up at the vines, we're in pretty good shape. So kind of a combination of his work and ours, but it's the fruit that's delivered every year is clean and beautiful, and the people that we deliver it to just love it. It's there. It's got great flavors, and just no mold, mildew, rot, anything. So he's done a good job for us. And then, unfortunately, when we started with Gary was having health issues, And during the making of our 2007 vintage, Gary got really ill with pneumonia and, fell and hurt his back and, really had some significant issues with that. So at the time, Sterling was dating Kelly Kidney. So I'm not sure if that's anything, but, one Kelly to another Kelly, I guess you can't get in trouble. So Kelly, it's okay, perfect.
Yeah, we met Kelly.
But we met Kelly when she was working at Lemelson. And we had talked about, kind of what she was doing. And Lemelson had her doing an unusual test for them where they were taking these French oak barrels, taking the tops off the French oak barrels, de-stemming all the fruit, and doing the entire fermentation in the barrels. So these ultra small lots. We thought, that'd be a good way to waste some money. Let's go do some of that. So Kelly in 2006 started what we call Nipple Hill, which is a small brand where we ferment in small wood vessels. And basically did that in 6 and 7. And when Gary was sick in 7, she stepped in and helped finish the 2007 wines.
Difficult vintage also.
Difficult vintage, which was entertaining. And then Gary's illnesses and stuff progressed, where Kelly then took over everything in 2008. And Kelly has been with us making our wines ever since. So we're now going on 19 vintages.
Very fortunate to.
So we've been very fortunate that we haven't been. So it's for us, we've got a vineyard manager and a winemaker that are both intimately familiar with the vineyard weaknesses, strengths, and have allowed us to, more consistently, make the wines in a stylistically the way that we like. And it's just, Kelly and Gary had very different winemaking styles. And it's just kind of one of those that, when we first started making the wines, Gary's wines are very big. And there's a lot of extraction and those kind of things. So he's using, new French oak barrels, probably about the same as we do now, about half. But it was heavy char, toasted heads. He was, adding tannins when the wines were going in for extra extraction. He was running the heat up a little bit. So it was stylistically something when his wines came out, they weren't made for early consumption. And they were big, they were bold, and a lot of tannins early. But what I will tell you is Gary's 2005s and 6s are drinking exceptionally right now. And this is 20 years later. So you're kind of looking at it going, okay, makes sense.
We had more of it.
Exactly. Can we get some more of that? And Kelly's style is
elegant,
a little bit softer. I mean, we brought from Gary the concept of whole cluster, and Gary liked about 40%, and that's pretty much the average of what we've stayed with ever since. And that was a change for Kelly back then. Kelly wasn't kind of a whole cluster fan. So we kind of ran that for us, knowing that impacts accessibility young, and we were still using 50% new French oaks, 25% once filled and 25% twice filled. That's our oak regime. So basically after 3 years, these barrels become the furniture you see, or lawn furniture, or I cut them up and that's the most expensive pizza oven in the world. But it's for us, that's stylistically what we like. We want wines that are there and have structure, and I like age on our wines. So for us, like this summer, we're pouring 2017 and 18 vintage. That's our current release. And the wines are beautiful. I mean, it's just when you do a lot of tannic structure, and you sell them young, they need to lay down. And it allows them to soften and integrate and come together. So it's just been an evolution for us. And that was something else that took us a long time to come into, is when we were early on, I mean, we started with, I think our first vintage was maybe 300 cases. And you're thinking, okay, 300 cases, I can sell this in an hour. Let's go. And you'd start through it, and it's just kind of, but you're fighting 800 of your closest friends.
And the economy.
And the economy back then, because, I mean, we basically did a real good job of selling the 5s. And the 6s came out about the time where the economy crashed. So it was 2008, 9, and, wine sales dropped off the charts. I mean, basically the demand just went away. So it was just like, okay, this is a good business we got into. We can do this. We're going to be rich.
Rich in wine.
But, it all cycles. I mean, we've been through 4 of them in the 22 years we've been doing this. And, the thing you learn is tomorrow's another day, and it'll fix itself, and you just kind of let it go. But we also found that as we were doing it, after we left Gypsy Dancer and started working with Kelly, we went the first year over to 12th and Maple. Mm-hmm. And that was a facility that basically you gave instructions to and stepped out of the way. So you really couldn't do anything with your wines.
You couldn't use your own equipment.
Yeah, I mean, even sorting was difficult to get them to approve. So you had equipment and everything else. You couldn't do anything with it, and it was just like, okay. So we lasted maybe a year and a half there, and then we're approached by the Carlton Winemaker Studio, and went over, and Eric convinced Kelly and I to go over there, and we moved over there and probably did 7 or 8 vintages there. And it was a good collaborative.
2010 through 16.
Yeah. It was great in that there were, 10 other winemakers. So once again, stupid questions had places and homes and could get answers, and you could see what other people were doing and how they were doing it. And you had all different styles. I mean, you had from, Isabel and Maggie, who were there and basically, sorting about, a 10 every 12 hours, to people that were just kind of waving it through. But, kind of unique mindsets. And with that, each of them had a reason for doing what they were doing. And it gave you the ability to watch what they were doing and taste their wines and make determinations as far as your own. So I think it allowed us to grow a lot as far as stylistically during that time frame, because you learned so much and you kind of understood what doing different things did to the wines and how it impacted it. And, as opposed to having to wait every vintage, because you only get 1 shot a year. Things like you should be able to freeze the grapes or something, but no. So, from that side, I mean, that group of people were probably some of the bigger influences that we had. Andrew Rich and Eric, and Mo Ayub was there when we were there, and
Anthony King.
Anthony was running the place the last couple of years we were there, so he wasn't originally there when we started. But I mean, there were people that have gone out and, a dozen different brands that kind of started their own wineries afterwards. As everybody kind of seemed to be there for 4 to 6 years and then would kind of move out. And, a lot of kind of special stuff. I mean, right now I think you've got Double Aught and some of those. So, again, people that are doing different things, but, I always enjoyed it. The only thing we didn't enjoy was the fact that there were 10 other winemakers there. And a lot of times you'd have to process wine at 2 in the morning. You know, you'd be on the schedule for 8 p.m. and Maggie would be there going, it'd be 11 o'clock and you're going, hey, are we about ready? Are we about ready? Yeah, we're almost there. But, you know, what I will say is she is meticulous and does a beautiful job.
Does she make her wine there? Or
She doesn't.
Was she
They
down in
have-
Coelho? Sorry to, I think it was more Mo that was,
I don't know. I'm old. I can't remember.
okay. We can delete all that.
You said we weren't selling truth. Come on.
It's true. Just tell
Is that what you said?
It's a beautiful story.
It's a good story.
It's a good story. Sorry for correcting you.
That's okay.
How have your wines then? You mentioned obviously Kelly the different style, but also your vines have evolved and all of that. How are your wines now? How have they changed? How has your wine style
Matured.
changed?
They've definitely matured to the palate for me, especially the young vines. I didn't appreciate them the first couple of years, and then 2015 came along, and I was like, wow, this Charlotte is beautiful.
Yeah, when we got the first fruit off the upper blocks in 2009, and it was very much fruit forward, fruit driven, just kind of as you would expect, you know, kind of powerful exuberance, as opposed to, you know, refined dignity.
Dignity.
But you know, it's just we've seen. I think it's a combination of timing, ripeness, and determining what we call ripeness versus, you know, when originally we were looking primarily to bricks, and you know, and the first couple of years we were there were warmer years, and so you know you'd see sugar levels just run off the charts, and then you know. Most of the more recent years, except for last year, you know, you were struggling to get to 22, 23 bricks, whereas, you know, when we were starting off with the younger vines, we were seeing them run to 24, 25, and if you didn't get them off the vines, you were sweating it. So, I mean, for us, we like our wines kind of in that target range of, you know, 12.5 to 13.5 on the alcohol. And with that,
I think you're getting it.
it's been pretty consistent there for the last several years. Last year was a little warmer year, where we saw at the end the sugars run the last week. So it was kind of one of those that we had on purpose looked at trying to get short, you know, high 23s on the bricks. With the pHs, and what we saw was as we started hitting 23, it went to 24 before you could blink, and then you know you saw the pHs jump, you know, from 3.5 to 3.8, and just you know things that don't make sense, but you know it's Mother Nature. You know, make a plan, and you know God thinks it's a joke.
Mother Nature.
So it's just kind of, you know, you can do everything meticulous and correct, and you still don't control things. So, I mean, you know, from a couple of city kids or from an accountant, you know, you're wanting to keep everything within, you know, this little box. Farming has been a learning experience for us. So the good news is after 22 years, I don't bury the tractor anymore. I know where the 6 holes are. Yeah. And I don't think, well, I can get right up to it, make it look pretty. Yeah. So now we just leave it.
You haven't rolled down the hillside either, so that's also
Knock
good.
on, yeah. We did have a young man roll.
We've had 2 tractors rolled here over 22 years. One was a group that was in hedging for us, and young kid, maybe 18, and he was end of the day, and he only had 2 rows left, and I think he just got in a hurry, and he came around a corner on the hillside and just dumped it. And he was in a cab and he had his seatbelt on.
Goodness.
So basically, broke all the glass in the tractor and diesel everywhere. But basically, they got him out with no injuries. He had a couple of scrapes.
His mother was upset.
But yeah, his mother went and kicked the guy's ass that basically sent him here. It was not.
It wasn't our tractor.
It wasn't our tractor. It was, somebody that was in doing it. But still, you just feel bad when that kind of stuff. That was like the guy rolling the belly scraper down the side.
Yeah.
But fortunately,
Yeah.
we've got a lot of hillsides here. And I've learned over the years that you don't go this way on the hill, at least not when it's wet.
I used to tractor all this. After 2008, we moved here, and it was like, we got to cut corners here. Someone else said, we have to drive. And so over here, above those rocks, it's very steep, and then you come out, you got to turn. So you have to pay attention on those turns.
But at least then you were riding one that had the tracks, like a tank. So that was a lot more stable than a lot of the stuff that these guys are using. But yeah, we've kind of learned as when two wheels get off the ground, it's not a good thing. So we stop and back up. And
He wears his seatbelt.
I wear a seatbelt. Yeah, I don't like seatbelts, but I wear a seatbelt. You just hear all the stories in the industry. There's a lot of people that have had a lot of issues with tractors going sideways.
Yeah,
But
very fortunate.
I had something I was going to say. I can't remember. Must just be talking too much.
Tell us about this space. Obviously, you mentioned coming into wine through food, through hospitality, through wanting to share. So tell me about the design of this space and about sort of building a hospitality program.
Yeah, we were growing. We thought we'd grow lavender here, and so nothing was here but the dirt and the pond. And we spent days and hours putting in irrigation for 500 lavender plants, where you're sitting. And then the first winter came and we lost about 150 plants. And then the next year, another 100.
Well, this was one of the areas that was originally planted with grapes. It's clay.
It's clay.
Specifically clay. And us being city kids, we think dirt is dirt and whatever will grow. It's Oregon. Anything's going to grow.
So I was sitting here looking at the view, and I said, you know what? We could put a patio here for some shade. And one of the vineyard helpers told me about the Van Duzer down there in Andante, and they had a pond and they had a patio structure. I'm going to show it to you. So I went and I took pictures, and it was a double angled thing, and I showed it to Pat, and Pat's like, yeah, let's do a patio, but let's put in a barbecue and a pizza oven.
Cool.
And it was still going to be an open air patio. And then when the architect got involved, he's like, no, you're going to have to close it in.
It was actually the county.
The county said it? No.
Yeah, we wanted to basically just do a patio with a barbecue on one side and a pizza oven. And we thought, okay, that's fine. We'll be open air. How difficult can this be? And the county deemed this, because at this point we weren't open to the public at all. So this was going to be my man cave. And the county basically said that we need to vent it. We need a vent hood because this is a commercial space. And I go, we're not open to the public. How can this be commercial? They go, it's commercial.
It's going to be commercial.
Once again, you can argue with this or not, but we will win. So we said, okay, well, at that point we said, well, we might as well enclose it, make a room, and we can do a fireplace and
put a real stove in instead of a barbecue.
So this was back in 2013-14, and we made this, and once again we weren't open to the public, so this was my man cave. So I had a pizza oven, and I had an 8-burner stove, and the fireplace and a big screen TV. I mean, we were good.
Dinner parties.
I went dinner parties and, just disappear for hours. And then in 2014, Jackie thought, this would make a really good tasting room. It's like, oh. So it got transformed from that to there. None of this outdoor room here or this patio cover were here. So it was just that room and a slab out here.
And umbrellas.
And umbrellas. And then basically when we came in 2017 and built out the barn for the winery, we added the patio here. And then that allowed basically us to taste out here open air. And then 3 years later, we just found that the heat was too much in the summer and you couldn't even sit out on the patio comfortably. So we basically glass enclosed it, added air conditioning, and now it's kind of a 4-season room that we can use year round.
People didn't like the misters.
Yeah, we tried the misters in Arizona trick for a year, but I guess when it's humid in Oregon, misters don't work as good.
Turn that off, please.
Turn that off. I'm getting wet. My hair is getting mussy. It's like, okay, whatever. That's why she doesn't let me do customer service.
You're good with customers.
So that was kind of here. You know, it's one that early on, a lot of the stuff we did ourselves. Like all of the raised beds up there with the railroad ties. I originally did, and we did them as vegetable gardens. So I was doing all organic vegetables and all that kind of stuff. And when our daughter got married in 2018, Jackie said, "These will be flowers." So all the vegetables went away and became a cut flower garden. And you know, you just kind of little by little. I mean, it's friends will gift us different things. David and Jeannie Beck gifted us these irises. These are beautiful yellow irises that they originally gave us about 50 of the starters. And we started a little garden in the back, and 50 went to about 1,000 back there. And then we planted another 1,000 up here. So that little small gift that they gave us is now almost an acre of yellow irises. And it's just little stuff like that, or someone will cut a rose. And you know, in Oregon, if you just put the rose cutting in the ground, it grows and you get beautiful roses. So it's just little by little. We do a lot of gardening and landscape stuff, and you know, it's as we start to run out of, you know, hardscape projects we can do because we don't have any more land, then we start working on different things. But I'm thinking we're going to get to relax here one of these days.
Get the gate fixed.
Okay. Yeah.
You mentioned your daughter. Obviously, the wines here are named for
Yes.
people in the family. Tell me about how that started and about the evolution of wine
The
names.
first wine, the 2005, we named after our daughter Alyssa.
She was
15.
going on 16.
She was not happy about us doing the winery, selling the house, and moving to Oregon. But we waited till she went off to college. And then once she got to college, she was very interested in if because we could send her some wine.
But yeah, no, she was, oh, I can't believe you used my name. I
Didn't ask for permission.
You didn't even let me. It's like, okay, cool.
And then Thomas, our oldest son, only son, was our second vintage with Gary. And it was part of it was from the vineyard that we owned in Dundee with Gary.
So we owned a small vineyard with Gary called A&G. It was right next to Mo, and it's now the Elevate Vineyard. And we owned that in 6 and 7 and made wines out of it. And when Gary got ill, we had to sell that. We didn't have capital to buy him out, so we sold it to the group that currently owns Elevate. And they've done a real nice job with it. It's a pretty property, and the grapes are really, really tasty. That's kind of one I really wish we had at this point.
But the grapes that go into Charlotte up here were similar clones that Gary had on the property that we owned with him. So we named it after Charlotte, which is Tom's daughter, our granddaughter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now our son doesn't get a wine.
He doesn't have a wine now, but just old 6 and 7.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the rest of the wines, you got Bella.
Who's a niece. We got Blushing Cage. She came and worked at the vineyard for a couple weeks during one summer when she was in med school. And she was an incredible worker until our daughter showed up. And our daughter went out with her to work the fields one day and looks at her and she goes, "We really don't have to do this. Let's go shopping." Boom, they were gone and I never saw them again for the next week. But she got a wine named after her for that. Anna Claire is another niece that actually was the architect that designed the new house and buildings. Jacqueline's, we finally made a reserve wine called Jacqueline's when it was good enough.
He didn't ask my permission, but he did it. That's okay.
I said, "Do you really like this wine?" She goes, "Yes, this is awesome." I said, "Okay, that's yours." And I think that's pretty much it.
And Dukes is our last name, so all the wine is named after.
Well, you know, when you're drinking, you want something you can remember. So Dukes, and it's only 2 colors. Dragonfly, so we can actually see it and make it work pretty good.
Yeah, why the dragonfly?
This was a connection that Jackie has with her dad. And her dad was a fighter pilot. And before we moved here, we were living in Scottsdale, and Jackie was doing veterans funerals.
VAR, Veterans Memorial Cemetery duties.
You know, basically doing honor for vets that were being, put in with no family and other visitors, and go out and pay respects and, support family and do those kind of things. But it was a dirt cemetery in Arizona. And when she was thinking about her dad, she would see the dragonfly. And with that, she just made the connection with her dad, and it's a good thing. So he loved food and wine, and we thought, well, let's just incorporate that in to the journey. So they've been apart since day one.
Dragonfly Reservoir.
Yeah, this time of year we'll get thousands of dragonflies.
Yeah.
All different colors, so black and white and yellow and red and orange and blues, just all kinds of stuff. People sit out here and then just fly around them. So it's kind of fun.
So it keeps his memory alive.
Correct.
That's amazing.
Yes.
Jackie, you did some work with the International Sommelier Guild. I'm curious about your education through that.
I did 2 semesters of that. I don't think I finished the second one because I didn't like the geology part. But the whole purpose was to figure out why I liked the wine. So I got to learn every Sunday for about 8 weeks. Go taste 12 wines in the morning and 12 wines in the afternoon, and this was down in Phoenix.
Yeah, the tasting part's the good part for sure. And then, when you have to study all the rules and regulations and classifications.
I didn't really have to be able to toot to everybody that I knew what area wine came from, so.
It was more for
This
you.
is from Australia. So.
What did you find out about why you like the wines you like? I'm just curious.
Just when you smell and you taste why you like it, and then as Pat says, everybody has their own taste buds, and
tannic structure and feel in the mouth, and all of the things that kind of jump out and progress, and each one kind of just attacks differently. So
I wanted to appreciate white Pinot, because the first Pinot I ever tasted and smelled was from California, and Pat's like, "You gotta try this," and I go, "Why would someone want to drink stinky socks?" He said, "You'll come around."
it's like, we won't waste the Burgundy on you for now. You'll be okay. We'll give you some time. We'll grow into it.
Yeah.
But I mean, the biggest thing with the Pinot or the Burgundy or the other things was, the California stuff, when you're drinking Cabs and Chardonnays and those kind of things, are beautiful on their own. You just drink them and everything's good. But, when you're sitting out, in the driveway with your glass watching the kids, Pinot's not always your first choice as far as at least what we could afford back then. So it was a little more aggressive. And,
Cab.
And it was a lot different than what you're seeing up in Oregon these days, for sure.
No, I like the elegantness of Pinot, and I like when you can go through a whole glass of wine and pick out the layers of the flavors throughout the tasting. That's what I learned.
Yeah, Jackie's actually got a better palate than I do. So I know what I like, but I don't care why.
Well, that was the same thing in college. I wanted to know why, studying. And he'd be like, forget about the why, just memorize.
You just need to get to the answer.
But why?
See, that's just my, this is my box, and I'm OCD, and I can get from here to there, and I don't care what's in between.
Mine.
And that's why she tastes better, because she can spend the time to taste and look and feel and smell, and that's lovely. But
tell me about describe a Duke's Pinot Noir. What are the characteristics? How do you define what's special about this place?
For us, stylistically, we are more elegance than power. We are looking for intricate layers. We're looking for something that will interact with all the senses. So a beautiful nose, introduction, front of the mouth, fullness in the middle of the mouth, ending, balance, and a long finish. We've got two completely different wines. So when we're looking at the vines from the bottom that were planted back in 1996, you're seeing more of the sedimentary characteristics with red fruits, strawberry, cherry. You've got some cola and spice,
Like
and just more of a elegant finish through. I mean, it's for me, the way I view these is it's not the huge Pinots that you see a lot of people make, but it's something that will truly ascend food. So as you're there and you're eating the food by itself, it's great, but when you put the Pinot in your mouth, it makes the food just come to life. And vice versa, the food does the same thing for the wine. So we're looking for something that isn't overpowering and gives you the beautiful influence, but at the same time just kind of hits all the pieces. And then the stuff from the top side of the property has evolved over time, where it was a bigger sister, with more fruit and depth and strength and what have you. As these vines have started to hit 20 years, you're getting a lot of that, but you're also getting the elegant layering and the long finishes. And part of that is not only, kind of the new young fruit, or the new fruit, from the current vintage, but what we're seeing is as those wines have aged, you're picking up those characteristics.
And he does all that from the barrel when we go through in February and get ready to blend. He'll tell us where he's getting all these flavors.
And where I think they're going to go. And that's something that Kelly's done a really, really nice job on, is setting these wines up for success age-wise. And, this last year, Eole Amity Hills had their 20-year AVA celebration. And as part of that, we sent wines from 2005, 8, 10, 12, 15 to Jeremy Young with International Wine Report, who was doing an article on that, and had him taste them and run through and rate all these wines. And, the wines, I think the lowest score we got on any of those was 94 points, and a couple of them were 95 and even 96. So it's kind of one of those that as they age, they just pick up the depth and elegance.
05.
So it's just kind of, you know, it's something that when you're out working the vineyard every day, you don't think about. You know, as you're thinking is 6 feet ahead, and you know, I got to get this done so Jackie doesn't beat me. But no, the beatings will continue later. But so it's been entertaining. But the wines themselves, food friendly, balanced, and elegant.
We talked a little before the interview about how much the neighborhood has grown up since you've been here. Tell me a little bit about some of the evolution of this little crest of the Yosemite Hills.
Yeah, when we started off here in 2005, the Sandbergs next door with Iota were here. They'd been here, I think, since 2001, and were selling most of their fruit to Beaufrere. And you know, Don and Joanna just were so gracious. Our barn was being built, and it was about 4 weeks behind. So they actually let us stay with them for the time before our barn was done, and it was just kind of in Arizona. That wasn't exactly what you would expect. Till neighbor to let you move in.
Come live in our guest house.
It was like, oh, perfect. But you know, it's just kind of, we've seen, they were there. Crawford Beck had finished planting theirs, I think, the year before, just a quarter mile around the corner. This one here, Willikai, was being finished by William Hill. I think that was the last year that they were planting. Antica Terra was not there. Keeler, I think at that point, was still farming grass seed and other things. So it was just kind of, there weren't many vineyards here. There were...
Oh, Amity.
Amity, you know, up on top of the hill. He was there. He was far enough away that we really didn't interact much with him. He was a hoot, though. Oh, my God.
Myron.
Myron was... He always wanted you to come over and go swimming. The old Amity Hills, you know, you had, you know, Christum and Bethel Heights. You were just seeing Seven Springs go in. Bjornson was starting, I think, shortly right after that. But there wasn't much here. I mean, I think over the last 20 years, we've seen at least 20 different vineyards come in within 2 miles of us. And some are small, 3 acres, and you know, others are across the street, 40 acres, and on the hillsides. And you know, you just look at the growth. I think when we started, you know, there were maybe 350 wineries, and now it's over 1,000. And you know, you look at the vineyards, and there were maybe, you know, 500 or 600, and now it's, you know, 1,500. And and most of them have been expanding. So it's kind of, you know, like anything else farming, where there's success, people want to flood the market until there is no success. And I think that's kind of where we are right now, is just, you know, there's an oversupply, but yeah, over time it'll correct itself. And it's one that, you know, you just don't step outside your box or over promise or overspend and avoid debt and all those kind of good things. But yeah, it's definitely a different world than it was as far as just sheer volumes.
For this space, I guess for you, for this space and for the brand, what's next? Is there anything on the horizon? Anything you're looking ahead to? Anything you're excited?
I mean, if this year we're
relaxation and not doing anything.
No.
Well, we're 22
Celebrating
years
our 20th
in,
vintage.
and this year we're celebrating our 20th vintage, which is the 2024. And we'll be doing a series of events and parties. And in August, we're going to do a 20-year vertical tasting with at least wine from every vintage going back. You know, and sharing that with neighbors and colleagues, and then, you know, a few wine critics, and then wine club kind of have their own special stuff. The physical aspects on the property, I think we've built out and planted all of the land that we're going to plant. We've got another 10 acres we could plant, but we won't. And I think we finished construction here about 3 weeks ago on the last piece of hardscape that's going in. So it's every year we've kind of been building something for the last 20 years. So we've, started with the barn in 2006. We started construction on that, finished it in 2008. And that's kind of 1/3 was an apartment that we lived in for 18 years. Oof.
Oh, yeah.
And then the other 2/3 we built out as the winery. So we've got just this big, beautiful space that we make our little bit of wine in, and works real well for our volumes. And then from there we added this building and the pump house. And when we started making wine here, we added a second cold room because we over vintage our wines. So, a lot of people will take in, even when we were with Gary, we were basically bottling our last year's wines in August. So we'd be ready for harvest. And now we're bottling after 18 months. And once again, I just like that, what it brings in, the concentration, it just allows the wine to breathe a little bit more and make some depth into it. But I guess it's been, 3 years now before we started the house project? Or was it 4?
When we started it, yeah.
So we built out a small house up on
It
top.
used to be a goat hut.
It was a goat hut.
Yeah.
It was, I think, 22 by 32, and the goats lived up on top of the hill, and you'd go up there and you go, wow, this really is a nice view.
That's the view of the property.
And Jackie finally said, I think I want their view. So
No, it started out, it was going to be a mother-in-law and father-in-law quarters.
yeah, my dad was having trouble, and we were going to have him come live with us after my mom passed, and
He said, no, I don't want to live here.
we
for
built it out.
an extended period.
He said, you guys are
cold."
great, but
Yeah.
Oregon's not my jam. So
I said, let's build it for us.
it changed the project scope a little bit at that
Made
point.
it a little bit longer.
And then we built an office and a gym and an outdoor kitchen up top after that. And then we just finished an underground cellar on the backside of the property. So those are kind of, I think, the last pieces of the puzzle as soon as we get the gate functional on the bottom. So we just built out the landscape, the entry. So that was last year's project.
Yeah. So at nighttime, we can shut the gate.
But I think we're pretty much done at this point. But we have, because we were doing rock walls. 3 years ago, we paved all the way from the road, so that was a mile of paving. That's a fun thing. But it's been great. You don't have the dust and everything follow you up.
The customers really appreciate it, and so do the truck drivers when they're bringing up the bottles.
Yeah. We haven't lost a truck in a while.
The trucks were stuck down at the bottom with
They'd get off
new
the road,
bottles.
and you just couldn't get them up. So there were years where we had to unload all of the glass at the bottom of the property and spend 10 hours driving it up pallet by pallet. It's not like the old days where truck drivers could drive trucks. Somehow.
Yeah.
But we get there. But no, I think at this point, for us, we're a small brand. We do a couple thousand cases, and that's all we really aspire to. We don't want 200 of your closest friends here tasting on weekends. If we've got 6 or 7 tables, we're happy. It's just kind of,
It's manageable.
it's manageable, exactly.
And
So
you can touch them and speak with them and give them a good experience.
for us, it's the interaction with people that are here. Basically you can come out, you can answer questions, you can talk to them, you can, figure out what they like and don't like. And when you get bigger, you just can't do it. So, for us, we've got incredibly small staff. Mackenzie's it.
Oh, we also have Addie for
And
this.
we've got Addie for the summer. So usually we'll bring in 2 part-time people for the summer and then 1 full-time people. But our person, I guess. I'm an accountant, not an English major.
Okay.
I hated English. But that's okay.
You're good at it, though.
But I think as far as improvements and those kind of things, it's just going to be kind of fine-tuning, more landscape than anything.
Maybe turn the barn into a VRBO or lifestyle properties rental.
Well, we'll try that once or twice.
I thought you were going to go back to the goats. That's disappointing.
No. When the goats got rid of this one,
They got
we
a new
built
home.
a new one on the top of the property in the corner, which is even better view.
So maybe that'll turn into like a tea room or something.
Yeah, no, it's up at the actual highest point on the property,
600.
looking at over the entire coastal range, all the property, the vineyards. Yeah, the goats live well.
Yeah. They're cute.
We got a lot fewer animals than we used to. At one point, I think we had 16 sheep and 12, 13 goats, and chickens
That
and
included
ducks.
lambs and kids, but yeah.
And now I think we're down to 4 goats, and chickens and ducks,
2 Pyrenees.
and 2 Pyrenees, but
And
no
1 Emma.
more sheep. We made the mistake of getting Suffolks, and the last mama that we had was 250 pounds. And the baby's like 150. And she made the mistake of getting between Jackie's legs when she was feeding her, lifted her off the ground. The poor sheep disappeared. I don't know what happened. Jackie goes, "She's out of here. I don't care how. She's out of here now."
They're scary, the big animals.
Yeah, they're not too bad. The rams are a pain, but
Yeah.
so we're just kind of more mellowing into, I think,
Easy life.
kind of a maintenance mode. You know, we're in our mid-60s and just kind of
Where did it go?
slowing down and enjoying, you know, the little things more. So,
He planted me tons of rose bushes everywhere. There's roses here, roses in the back.
I think we're up to
Roses up
200
top.
rose bushes now. So now all we got to do is put them in the vineyard
Yeah, at the end.
at the ends. So that may be this year's project. We don't have many left, so.
Amazing.
Come back next year, there probably will be.
Amazing. Last question for the two of you.
Sure.
What is your proudest accomplishment, or greatest achievement, as you look back on where you are now? What makes you proudest?
We're still married.
Yeah, I know I'm hard, but we've been married 43 years.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
A long time.
Yeah, no.
I sleep with one eye open, but
No. Yeah, raising 2 good children, successful.
I think that's the biggest, is the way our kids have turned out. They're good people. They care. You know, their dreams are not necessarily our dreams, but they're their dreams.
Otherwise, they'd be here making wine, right? Yeah.
So, you know, and, you know, it's kind of, I think that's the greatest accomplishment. And, you know, a disappointment is they don't want to follow us in this endeavor. But, you know, they've got to live their own. And for some people, this is not an industry you should be in. You either love it or you don't. And if you don't, it'll eat you up. So,
We do appreciate it, and we go to bed at night. You shut the doors and you look out.
well, going from nothing being here to what we've done
Yeah.
is pretty cool. And it's just like eating an elephant. It's just kind of one bite at a time. So none of this, when we started, we weren't thinking of any of this. I mean, we thought maybe we'll have a little vineyard and
Pond.
small house, and, you know, come up here a couple months a year. So it's, you know, I think we don't have an off switch.
That's a good thing.
The only thing I'm worried about is that now that I don't have a construction property, Jackie will just sell it. We built a cabin up in the mountains
Munns Park, Arizona.
when I first retired, back when I was 37. And not more than a month after I finished it, she sold it. We sold
We
it
sold it.
so we could buy the vineyard. But
See that selling of things? Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
change is not good for us. So we're 22 years in, and we figure we got a while to go. Good
Well,
people.
that's all the questions I have for the two
Cool.
of you. Anything I didn't ask that I should have, anything we didn't cover you're hoping to cover today?
I don't think so. Appreciate you coming out and spending time
Thank
with
you.
us.
Thank you both so much for taking the time to share with us. Thanks for sharing this beautiful space with us and sharing your story. And we'll go ahead and let you off the hook. Thank you.
Appreciate
All
it.
right.
Thank you very much.